Hello, everyone. I wish I could say that there's something I can say that will make all that stuff Daniel said come true today, but unfortunately, I spent the last 72 hours on the roads of Nigeria, and after you bump around a little bit, most of your intellect just goes out the window with you know? But I will try and share a little bit, just a little. Oh, by the way, how many people here are proficient with PowerPoint? How many people know how to use PowerPoint? I hate all of you. I tried to make my very first PowerPoint slide today. Let's just say it didn't go as well as I thought it would. Let's play a little game. If you are carrying a smartphone, a personal device of your own in here, please take it out, hold it in your hand. BlackBerry, Android, iPhone, Java, your village phone, pull it out. Now do me a favor, right? This is a very short experiment. Most of you have codes that lock your phones, yes? Open them. And by the way, if you take more than 4 seconds to open your phone, you work with the SSS. And we're watching you. Okay, everyone open them? Now, take your phone and give it to someone who you don't know in the crowd. Go ahead. No, please, stop. Oh, you don't want to take it, so you don't give him yours. How many people here actually gave someone else their phone? The rest of you just said, I'll get back to that. The reason most of us are unwilling to do that is first because that's an invasion of privacy, you know? But beyond that, it's because, quintessentially, you are opening a part of yourself which you're not willing to share with another human being to the person's eyes, correct? As I said, my very first PowerPoint presentation, so pardon me. That is the moon. Well, that was the moon. I'm not sure what's happening right now. That's the moon. For centuries, mankind always thought that the moon was some sort of deity. It was worshipped. It was trusted to affect crop growth. The one thing which the moon was actually capable of affecting, which is the tidal pull of the earth, was totally ignored. Nobody thought about that. But we always thought, the moon, I will go out and pray to the moon. You know, and Ikem Biduka will come and marry my daughter. Or some such. I've been watching a bunch of Nollywood movies, forgive me. We know differently now, don't we? Next. That man, or as close as it comes, I want to believe he looked better than that in real life. You know, and maybe someone just bungled it. But this is Homer. Homer is the person who's credited with having written the Iliad. The Iliad is the greatest single body of fictional work transcribed into writing in human history. All of the Greek gods you know about, every one of them, finds their feet in the Iliad, which was written by Homer. Now what Homer did is he went out and he took all of these stories, collected all of them, and he wrote them down. Because he did that, history remembers him as the person who wrote those stories, and in very few cases is the actual distinction made to show that he only transcribed what was previously orally transmitted. Homer. Homer's version of things shows us not just a mythological world which sheds light on the beliefs of mankind once upon a time. It also shows us, in some ways, what our ancestors thought, what their fears were, what their hopes were, their expectations, what sort of world they lived in, what they expected as punishment for crimes, what they even thought of as crimes. Homer, in some ways, was the very first step in education anywhere across the Mediterranean. Next. Anyone know who this guy is? Anyone? No takers. Wow. Okay. I just spoke to you about the moon, yes? We didn't go to the moon until Well, there are a bunch of conspiracy theorists that say we never did go to the moon. And if you guys believe that, fine. Believe that if you will. I personally believe man went to the moon, mostly because I hope that at some point when my landlord kicks me out, I'll find somewhere to go. Moon will prove to be a good place at that point. But a century ago, over a century ago, this man wrote in a genre which is only referred to now very casually, and I think rather disrespectfully, as science fiction. He discussed an idea that the Earth may just not be as important as we all thought, except to us. He also went further to describe what would happen if we ever had to leave the Earth. In 1965, we started building the very first lunar modules. 85% of the design structure of the lunar modules that Apollo went to the moon with followed the words that this man, who was a science fiction writer, put on paper. His name is Jules Verne. Next slide. No one knows who he is, don't worry. Mostly because for the few of you who did see him, he probably didn't have that beard. And I think at this point his wife had left him, so he was, wasn't looking too happy. He has that look like, if you come close. His name is Ernest Hemingway, and when I was 12, I was very ill, and I had to stay in a hospital for a very long time. And all I read were this man's books, especially one which left me with a very important message. It was called A Farewell to Arms, and it was written about his experiences as a mercenary, which he actually was during the Spanish War. Ernest Hemingway's words are the only unbiased, straightforward account of the Spanish conflict that exists in the world today. Almost everything else is going to be tainted by some form of political perspective or one person trying to pat the back of his body. Hemingway was a mercenary. He didn't have a lot of esteem for himself. He was a guy who went out with a gun to shoot people for money. But he wrote, and what he wrote eventually helped the Western world see reality and see war differently. I'm getting somewhere here. Next one. Nobody here knows who he is, but most of you have read one of his most popular books. And he was a brilliant man indeed. His name is George Orwell. That one struck a bell, yes? Animal Farm. This is the genius who wrote it. Orwell also wrote another book. It was titled 1984, I think. Amazing. Amazing. In Animal Farm, he took a culture, a political standpoint that nobody was ready to touch with a long pole, because even discussing communism made you seem to be communist. And even into the beginning, even to the end of the Cold War in the United States, communists were perceived as next to the devil. Orwell couldn't come out right and say, there's something wrong with this thing, but it might have its good parts. So what did he do? He wrote a work of fiction. That work has been so influential in shaping young minds that even till today, it is still a part of curriculums across educational structures in the world. Next. Who else misses this man? I don't need to tell you much about him. Amazing mind, fantastic author, very, very funny individual. I had the pleasure of meeting him just a few weeks before he passed away. Amazing, amazing. Great sense of humor. He's one of those people who can tell a joke and hold it until you're dying before he tells you he was joking. Why do you take life so serious? Look at you. God rest his soul. Chinua Achebe caught the reality of a part of Nigeria which was never recorded in written history and saved it so that all of us and all that come after us will be able to experience it and see where we came from. Now I'll pause here. There's a lot of things that are wrong with Nigeria. A lot of things that are wrong with the world. We're not the only country here. One of the things that I think comprises of our problems is the fact that we do not preserve history. And as the quote says, he who does not know where he's coming from does not know where he's going. Or he who does not acknowledge a mistake is doomed to repeat it. Essentially, we have to start keeping records. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine and I were talking, and he told me something. He said, "Oh, you know, there was a British film team here in Nigeria trying to shoot a documentary on Fela." I said, "Yeah, well, you know, they're in the right place. It's not like you're going to get any better material anywhere else." He said, "Oh, yeah, but that's the thing. They couldn't find early videos or photographs, for that matter." So when that documentary eventually made it to the BBC, most of the footage that wound up on that documentary came from outside of the shores of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And this is our hero. But I know, what does this have to do with you? We very easily toss away our own importance. I mean, I understand that you have to fight the battles you have to fight every single day. You have to deal with this and that, pay rent, and the landlord and the chick who will not say yes, all that stuff. I get it. But you are also every single person in this room and everyone you know and everyone that they know. You are all cogs in a huge engine. A huge, non-stop, incredibly powerful engine called humanity. If you really want to see change, you have to start finding what went wrong the first time and making sure that the next generation gets it right. It doesn't matter how you do it, and that's where creativity comes in. When I was in secondary school, I was told you could either be a student of the arts or a student of the sciences. But what really is the difference? Pablo Picasso said, art washes from the soul the dust of everyday life. What does science do? I'm not trying to insult anyone, really. The average scientist simply sits down and tries to proffer solutions to problems that every one of us have to deal with. Yes? The artist interprets everyday life in so many ways, in song, in dance, in film, different things. We have forgotten that creativity, I mean, it's not just about opposable thumbs. Creativity is largely responsible for the fact that humanity has survived this long on this planet. Yes, when you start thinking about nuclear devices, it might also be our damnation. But for the meantime, it is keeping us alive and well. We have begun to draw too many lines into the framework of our existence, and we tell ourselves, this is possible, this over here is not. You can either be arts or you can be sciences. You can either be a writer or you can be over there doing movies. I didn't quite understand those things. So when I have to write CVs, yeah, it causes a problem. My professional description is about that long. And I write it in really tiny print. Yours should be as well. Who says you have to live a life of conformity? Who says you have to do anything that someone else has done and found to be right? Whatever happened to discovering your own path? Whatever happened to curiosity? We're told by science that the cavemen made fire by rubbing two stones together. Have you ever sat down and rubbed two stones together? How bored were you? I mean, weren't there giraffes or something? Okay, pardon me, dinosaurs to hunt? What happened? It was like a rainy weekend, there was no game, so you just, okay, I'm not sure if that's what happened, but I will tell you something. The early man was a lot more curious than we are today. But the early man even then left rock carvings to show what he did, why he did it, how it happened, and what led him to discovery. Something we have forgotten to do. Now let me ask you a personal question. How many people in here keep diaries? Okay, that's about 3 people out of 100. That's great, that's great. How many of you who keep diaries have updated your diary within the last 1 year? Right, even fewer people. Thank you. Next. Nobel laureate. I'm not going to say much about him. You already know what he's famous for. The next slide shows a slew of people whom most of you may know. Over here, Fela Kuti. I've already spoken about him. The military junta of Nigeria's biggest problem at a certain point was silencing this one man. Why? Because in song, he could say more than all the broadcasting facilities in Nigeria were able to say about what was really going on. And because it was song and it was easily transmittable, people remembered it. So whenever you have a really bad day or your boss gives you hell, you go home, you strip down to your underwear and you play some fella and you get in the spirit. But generations to come beyond us will remember what our times were like and be able to chart a different course, hopefully, because of some of the things that man said. That man over there is Chike Madeguna. You don't know him, and if he had his way, you never would. He created an application called AfriNolly. I happen to have had the pleasure of working with him. When he started creating this application, it was a tiny thing, it was really small. Today, it boasts over 3 million users. It's a mobile app. If you've got a line from a certain network, you probably have it on your phone. That app has gone forward to pushing Nigeria's Nollywood industry and giving it a vicious kick in the butt and getting people up and moving, and has successfully turned in 200 new filmmakers into the Nigerian industry. Why? Because someone left him a diary which showed the beginning of Nollywood, which started ironically from living in bondage. Dagrin, hero to the Yoruba people. Two-Face Idibia, whose music can connect with at least half the people in here, correct? Kunle Afolayan, nationalist to the core, ferocious, very driven, Nigerian, and working with a history of things that his father left to him. How would you leave history for the future? You don't have to leave a diary, you don't have to create any sort of special tools to it. You can start with what you have. Social networking sites. Because history is nothing if you leave it by yourself. You have to be able to share. That's the important thing. Interact. Blog. Take pictures. Get involved. Because creativity is a beautiful thing, but if creativity does not serve change, if creativity does not better existence, then creativity is wasted. And you can be 1,001 different things in here. You can be a fantastic person to your neighborhood. But if you are not trying actively to change your world with the endowments that God has placed within you, and please, when I say endowments, don't think Nigerian music. It's an entirely different kind of thing. You are wasting your time. Today, if I leave you with one message, it's this. Take a deep breath. Remember that our ancestors once thought the moon was an entirely different being. What is the one thing you're thinking is unattainable today? Sharpen the spear of your creativity, attack it, leave notes so the rest of us can follow in your suit. I'm Andre, thank you.